going on, everybody? Welcome to Cocktails in the War Room. I am Mistress Carrie, and this is the War Room. And as you can tell over here, we're decorated for Christmas. So thank you guys for joining me each and every Tuesday night. Cocktails in the War Room. And this is how it is. Episode 107, by the way. I can't believe it's been that many episodes, but it started back on March 14th. And you guys in the War Room family have been sticking with me ever since, and we are riding out this pandemic together. And so every Tuesday night at 8:30, we get together to talk about music and the podcast, and we also are able to have special guests. So this week, I want to thank the CBD Relief Clinic and also Latini Creative Solutions for sponsoring this episode of Cocktails in the War Room. And I told you last week that we were going to have a very special guest this week. So if you want to talk about the military, if you want to talk about Metallica, and if you want to talk about whiskey, there's only one person to talk to. So I am pleased to introduce you guys to our special guest, Rob Dietrich, who is the master distiller of blackened American whiskey. What's up, Rob?
Carrie, how are you? It's good to see you.
We match.
Yeah, we do. I know. We're Twinkies tonight.
I appreciate the care package. You guys hooked me up with some swag. I love it. I'm going to send you some Mistress Carrie stuff back.
Sweet.
Thanks for coming in the War Room. I would think a lot of people think that you have the greatest job on the planet because you distill Metallica's whiskey.
I got to be honest, I really feel like I do have the best job on the planet. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I get to make whiskey, I get to drink whiskey, and I get to talk whiskey, and I get to do it with Metallica. And for me, that's my dream job within my dream job. It's pretty awesome. I love it.
What did you discover first, your love of Metallica or your love of whiskey?
Definitely Metallica. Yeah, Metallica first. That was 7th grade. My buddy Paul Creel, we were always listening to a bunch of weird stuff. He's like, you got to hear these guys. And I think it was Master of Puppets was my first song. And I was just blown away.
They have that effect on people that there's like life before Metallica and like life after. And it's once it got into your blood, it's like, okay, this is going to take me someplace I've never been before.
I would agree. It's I grew up with my parents have a lot of this vinyl back here is my parents. I've got a lot of I've kind of melded our collections together. And we grew up without TV. So I was always listening to records, always listening to music. My dad introduced me to everything, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, but he was also into like Harry Chapin and all these like bards, Gordon Lightfoot. So he was all over the board. And then I remember when I first heard Metallica, I was thinking that was the first time I thought, this is my music. This is like, I was always listening to Dad's music, loved his music, but this is my music.
That's how I like the 80s heavy metal is what got me from like my parents' love of the Beatles in Chicago and Three Dog Night and the Association and all of that stuff. And then all of a sudden it was like, hold on a second. And I dove headfirst into Queensryche and Iron Maiden. And then I got, I was a teenage girl in the 80s. So it was like the Bon Jovi, Cinderella, Skid Row, Rat, Dokken. Like I was in.
Same.
And then when I heard Metallica, at first I was like, holy shit, what is that? And, after spending 29 years at WAF, it's like, it's in the soul.
Yeah. I mean, they are the godfathers of metal. I really kind of feel like, or at least thrash metal.
Yeah. How do you end up a master distiller of whiskey? I mean, can you go to college for that? How do you learn this skill set to end up doing what it is that you do?
You can definitely go to school for it. One of the most notable places is in Edinburgh, Scotland. And that is Harriet Watt. You can definitely get trained there. I did not train there. I just like I do everything, I scrap from the ground floor and work my way up, and I just absorb as much as I can and learn as much as I can. I started in Denver in 2006 with Stranahan's Colorado Whiskey as their night distiller. I actually started on the bottling line, and it was kind of a wild story how I met the head distiller. But we were the first whiskey in Colorado, and I was with them for about 13 years before happily jumping on board with Metallica to make blackened whiskey.
I hinted to it a little bit in the intro. somewhere between you discovering Master of Puppets and you distilling Metallica's whiskey, you're also an Army veteran as well.
Yeah, yep. I served just under 4 years with the 10th Mountain Division. Did a couple of deployments in Somalia in the early 90s, and in a tour in Haiti in 94. And then I was out in 95, happily served.
There are a lot of active duty military and obviously veterans who have a very close and intimate relationship with whiskey.
Yes, yes.
And
Like,
so I'm going to apologize to you and everyone else if I ask you any questions that make anybody roll your eyes. But when I get an expert in the field, I always want to make sure that I'm hearing things from the expert. And I think when it comes to things like whiskey and scotch and bourbon, for somebody that doesn't know a lot, it can be incredibly intimidating, and you can almost be afraid to ask the questions. I have bright purple hair, so I don't care if I look like an idiot. So I'm going to ask the dumb questions. So the first thing is, can you explain to me, because you bring up Scotland and Ireland, can you explain to me the difference between scotch, bourbon, whiskey, all of the brown liquors that people might think are the same thing?
yes. Well, so first of all, no apologies necessary whatsoever, because this is what I love to do. I had to learn how to drink whiskey. I had to learn how to understand whiskey. I really feel passionate about allowing people to really embrace their palate and understand their palate, and without, because it is intimidating. People are afraid to when they're nosing a whiskey, they're afraid to, explain what they think they're smelling, because they think they're going to be wrong, or they're going to look stupid. There's no wrong answer. It's whatever your palate is, that's what you're drinking. So, kind of in the history of whiskey, Scotch is whiskey that's made in Scotland. That's generally you're gonna have your Highlands, your Lowlands, and that's some of those whiskeys are heavily peated. They're using dried peat, dried bog basically, to smoke the grain, and that's part of the malting process. Or they're using water that has been running through bog fields and peat. So you're going to get a heavily peated Scotch, or you're going to have Scotch that isn't peated. So there's so many different types of Scotch. Blended is really one of the best things that Scotland could do, is take a whiskey from this distillery and a whiskey from that distillery and blend them together and create their own unique whiskey from those. And so that's why you have master blenders, and they're highly regarded and revered in Scotland. In the United States, blending kind of had a bad connotation early on because of early practices, I guess. They were during Prohibition, they're cutting it with whatever they could, and people were getting hurt. But now, one of the things we've been doing with blackened whiskey is really kind of re-owning the blended category, and really embracing blending as an art, and really refining that to create a spectacular whiskey. So in the U.S. generally we're going to have bourbon. It's a misnomer that bourbon has to be made in Bourbon County. You can make bourbon anywhere in the United States. It just has to have the criteria of 51% corn, and then it could be 49% malted barley or rye or more corn, but it has to have at least 51% corn and be aged in brand new white American oak barrels. Then you've got rye whiskey, which is a really kind of earthy kind of flavor to it. Spicy. I really like rye. I tend to lean towards rye. And in bourbon, you're going to have that kind of sweetness of corn. And then there's everything in between. American single malt. That's what I cut my teeth on. At Stranahan's, it was making 100% malt barley whiskey. So, and single malt is when you call it, that comes from one distillery. So it's not like a blend from other distilleries, which again we've been able to embrace with our whiskey, is blending from other distilleries and other whiskeys. So there's quite a few. You've got obviously Canadian whiskey, you've got Japanese, you've got Indian. There's so many different categories. I think there's over 42 different categories that the Federal Taxation Bureau recognizes. So there's a lot of whiskey out there to really kind of explore.
When you talk about blends, you're obviously relying on your final product coming from sources in multiple distilleries And those products are determined on the ingredients. You talk about the water in Scotland or Ireland. I mean, everybody talks about how the water can make things different. So when you're making a blend and you want it to be consistent, there's so many factors that go into trying to have a consistent product.
There are so many variables. It's just like when you hear about wine and they're saying, oh, 2016 was a particularly good year because the crops, the grapes were nice and full and lush, and there was plenty of rain. Well, the same thing goes for whiskey. You might have a great year where the crops and the kernels of the grain are larger, and just all the circumstances were better, or where that barrel was stored in a barrel house. If it was high up and it was a lot of heat and evaporation, you can lose a lot more angel share. It's going to change the flavor profile of the whiskey. So when you're blending 5 different types of whiskey, which is what we do, we're taking whiskeys that already stand significantly on their own. They're already whiskey that are great whiskeys, but we're taking them and blending them together to create a phenomenal whiskey. But it really takes attention to detail and in a certain aspect of artistry to really kind of pay attention and not mess it up. I mean, that's pretty much, you really have to take a look at what I use as a control. So the last whiskey. So for example, if you've got batch 107, I would take batch 106 and taste 106 against the blend that I'm making to ensure that the quality and consistency are the same.
Well, you sent me, this is the care pack. I didn't even want to open it until I was here with you.
Nice.
Which the artwork is amazing. That's obviously what the bottle looks like, but I love the logos. I love the artwork. Can you tell me, I've heard the term so many times. Can you explain what the angel share is?
Sure. And real quick about that box, the artwork, that artwork is by Squindo, who does a lot of artwork for Metallica.
You can tell.
He's part of the Metallica family, and he took Scary Guy and created him into a conductor for the San Francisco, because that's what we did with that batch was, we did our sonic enhancement with that playlist. But the angel share is all about evaporation. Where I learned how to distill and age whiskey and make different cask finishes and creations. It's a very dry climate here, so the evaporation happens a lot more quickly in a drier desert climate. And what will happen inside of a barrel is the water will actually evaporate before the alcohol will. So you're going to lose volume, but proof will actually go up in the barrel. So generally we'll lay whiskey down at 110 proof. That's, the whiskeys we're dealing with were laid down at 110 proof. When I say laid down, it was spirit in the barrel, and then, pound the bung in, and it generally goes in at 110 proof. But over time, if you're pulling it out at, 5 or 6 or 7 years later, it could be up to 114, 115 proof, depending on where it was in the barrel house. Again, if it's at the top of the building, and the top of the stack, so to speak, you're going to get a lot more evaporation. So you're going to get a lot more angel share on that. So a lot more loss.
Do you use the barrels more than once? Because I know that there's a lot of other alcohols that will want to use those barrels and vice versa. So people will reuse wine barrels to make a different kind of liquor, or do you guys just use them one time, or what do you do with them?
Correct. Yeah. So, in order to be a straight whiskey, which we're in that category, you can only use the white American oak barrels one time, and then from that point we have barrel brokers that we sell those to. People like to do cask finishes with other people's barrels. That's one thing that I was really fond of when I was working in Denver was cask finishing with different wine barrels or rum barrels or anything I could really get my hands on. And it was a lot of fun because that's exactly what Dave Pickerel, the original master distiller for Blackened, came up with, with this idea when he collaborated with Metallica to make the whiskey. was to do a black brandy cask finish. And so that's where you're going to get a lot of the sweetness of the bourbon from the whiskey. You're going to get that kind of earthy, spicy elements of the rye, because we are a high rye whiskey as well. But what I love about it is you kind of get this soft, kind of dark fruit tones from the brandy that really kind of tie it all together and kind of create the backbone of flavor for it.
When you and I connected before the show started, I wanted to make sure, because we call the show Cocktails in the War Room, so we have been known to drink every now and again. So I want to talk etiquette with you, because there's obviously, when it comes to wines and liquors and tequilas, there are those people that believe that there's a very specific way that the distiller and that they made it for you to consume. And there's a very specific way. And then there are the people that are like, well, however I enjoy it that's how I like it. And I'm the one buying it. So I'm going to drink it however it is that I like it. Like, I enjoy really good tequila, but I also like to make really good high-end margaritas, which with a tequila aficionado, it's like I kicked a puppy. It's like, you can't make a margarita out of really good tequila, but I like a really good margarita with really good tequila. So what's allowed?
I think, again, you had a very good point. You're buying it. You're paying for it. As a distiller or as a blender, we're certainly going to have our preferences of how we like to approach it. And I always like to help guide people on how to taste a whiskey before you throw Coca-Cola or whatever you're going to throw into it. Because I really feel like that's where I came from. I started out drinking Jack and Coke, and then I think over time I realized I don't actually like this. I just ordered it because that's it's just
such a hard rock like metal drink too.
It's exactly, and I think that's why I was doing it. And it wasn't that I didn't like it. I just realized that there was a whole other world. You can. A buddy of mine turned me on to Maker's Mark, and I tried drinking it neat, and he explained he walked me through the process, and it suddenly was just like the door opened, like what the Wizard of Oz when they went from black and white to color. It's just like there's a whole world out here of incredible whiskeys, and so again, it's your palate. You drink it the way you want to, but I encourage people to step outside of their comfort zone too. And, for example, I've got, if, generally people have a rocks glass. This is actually a dirty glass. But,
perfect. Metallica would have it no other way. Dirty rock and roll, baby.
Exactly. A nice, what you want is a nice dirty glass to start out with your whiskey drinking experience. But this is a Glencairn glass. So this is perfect for nosing. I've got these for nosing and actually tasting whiskey, and I won't add ice or anything at that point because I'm really trying to identify the flavors of the whiskey. So using something like this really helps to identify what that whiskey is. Once you got that, and your favorite drink's an old fashioned, well, start mixing it up. Throw what you want in there. But generally, I'll walk people through like a 3-part tasting where if you're nosing the whiskey, you want to breathe in through your nose and your mouth, keep your lips slightly open, slightly parted, so you're breathing in, you're not getting that flare of heat in your nose. And once you've really kind of wrapped your mind around the olfactory, because the olfactory, ties back to our memories. You think of this smell reminds you of of grandma's kitchen or grandpa's garage. Like cigar ash and grass clippings.
It's amazing how tied to memory smell and taste are. I mean, I grew up in my grandfather's bakery. And so it's like there's certain smells and certain tastes that I am instantly transported back to my childhood. Or, you smell something, even, just walking by something, and I'm like, oh my God, a very specific memory. So
it takes you right to that place.
Yeah.
My grandma had she had these rose petal soap in the bathroom that you weren't allowed to touch. You weren't allowed to wash your hands with them.
Everybody's grandmother had those rose soaps. What is up
popular
with that?
thing? Yeah. So when I smell roses, it always takes me back to like those rose soaps I wasn't, supposed to touch. But again, that olfactory, just sparks that memory.
When you talk about your nose and you talk about really experiencing the whiskey, I know with wine, when you uncork it, you're supposed to aerate it and you're supposed to let it rest. And there's a way of doing it that's supposed to open up the wine. And is whiskey the same thing?
Um, Not really. I mean, it's a higher proof, so it does help to have it sitting in the glass for a minute. You know, a lot of times I'll kind of swirl it around, and it will naturally kind of aerate it, I guess, in its own way, but it's not really necessary. I do enjoy. I could sit there for 10 to 15 minutes just nosing a whiskey before I even sip it, just because there's so much information in there. Once you kind of calm your mind, I think, and think about it, or try and identify it. You know, one of the things I use, and this is something that anybody could download off the internet, but let's try and get it without the glare there.
Oh my God, that looks very scientific and involved.
It kind of it does, but honestly, it's a great tool to help you out. This is called a flavor wheel. It's a tasting wheel. So you'll have different. In the middle are your categories. For example, you know, vegetal, fruity, earthy, and then you have all these subcategories that can fall underneath each category, and that'll help you give you adjectives and descriptors of what it is that you're tasting. You're like, okay, I'm tasting something. It's familiar, but I don't know what it is. You can kind of look along, follow your tasting wheel and get a good idea for it. I actually made my own flavor wheel because I spent about 10 years in rock and roll, working as stage manager, stagehand, rigger, you name it. I was managing events, managing tours, that sort of thing. So I have a very distinct memory of what it feels, rock and roll backstage, the smells of everything. So I decided to create a rock and roll. Let's see here. Don't know if you can see it. There you go.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So I hand drew a rock and roll whiskey flavor wheel based off of some of Metallica's records and some of their experiences, but as well as using some actual descriptors of what you might find in a whiskey. So it really does kind of help you identify your own palate and trust your palate. And having the tools to do that. Even if you don't download something like a flavor wheel, just sitting down with two different whiskeys and nosing and then writing down what you're smelling, no matter what it is, whether it's gym socks or
which is exactly what it smells like backstage at a rock concert, by the way.
Without a doubt, exactly. I think one of the descriptors I put on here was Lemmy's boot heel.
I was hoping you were going to involve Lemmy in this thing. I was really hoping that you found a way to include. Is that something that people can download off of the Black and Whiskey website?
We're working on that.
Okay, good.
So I drew it up. It's in our Batch 100 box set, which there are still some of those available out there. Batch 100, and I know we'll get into sonic enhancement, but we do these playlists. The band members take turns creating a Metallica playlist that we use to sonic enhance the whiskey using a proprietary method we call black noise. And for Batch 100, the guys in the band asked me if I would select the playlist for Batch 100, and they turned it into a two vinyl disc box set. So you can actually get the two vinyl discs and the Batch 100 in it, which for me, that was like I was on cloud nine when I got that call, because I was like, you want me to help you make a record?
Deal. No problem.
Yeah, I'm in. I went down the Metallica rabbit hole on that one. I was like just digging through all the live shows and anything I could find my hands on to really put a cool playlist together. It was a lot of fun.
One of the things that we have addressed multiple times here in the War Room, and whenever we have guests that are sober, we call it Mocktails in the War Room, and we call it Temple Tuesday, and we encourage everybody to drink Shirley Temples to encourage their sobriety and to support them. So
Absolutely.
When you're talking about working hand in hand with the band members, with a band that obviously is so famously ridden this roller coaster when it comes to alcohol consumption, how do you do that and tread that line between obviously making this amazing whiskey and wanting the band involved in all of that, and still at the same time respecting lifestyle and sobriety? And it seems like a tightrope that you kind of have to walk there.
It is, and it's also it's definitely about responsibility, being responsible for your actions and how you approach the way you drink. And one of the things that you know the band, not every member in the band is sober. Not every member in the band, some of them drink, some of them don't. But what they've always done is they've always made decisions as a band. When they make a decision, they make it together, and they wanted to find another way to connect to their fans, and they also recognize that some of their fans don't drink and some of them do, and so they support responsible drinking and really understanding that we're all here to support each other. If you're seeing someone falter, you pick them up. But they also wanted to have another fun way to connect to the fans. So they decided as a band to approach creating a whiskey. Actually, going to Dave Pickerel, who's a legendary craft distiller in his time, and just really trusting on his knowledge and trusting that what he knows. Obviously Metallica knows everything about the how they make their music, so they wanted to find someone who could do that, and that was with Dave. And it's really important, the messaging that they have come out with. They're doing public service announcements about drinking responsibly, but also, if you do drink, enjoy this, enjoy the product that we've created.
I have two of the bottles. So I have batch 89 that a friend of mine brought back from the actual S&M2 concert in California. And
Nice.
then I have the one that you guys just sent me, which is batch 106. So I just got this one as well. So every time you guys make a batch, how many bottles are in a batch?
It's going to be, anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000. We've actually had a considerable growth this year. We had planned on growing even larger. We were going to tour. The band was going to go on tour. We were going to tour with the band to promote the whiskey. Obviously, COVID really changed all of our plans. I was going to say,
all of the shows we were all going to be at before COVID were amazing. This was going to be such a fun year.
I know. The last show I went to was the S&M2 in San Francisco. The last show that they played.
You must be deathly afraid of getting COVID, because one of the side effects is losing your sense of taste and your sense of smell. And for what you do, that's got to be the scariest thing that could happen.
Without a doubt. I mean, I'm out of a job.
Besides dying, obviously, I want to put that out there so somebody isn't on Twitter being like, "Oh, unless you die, you dummy." Like, yes, take that off the table. But the side effects for someone like you, that this is your job, to not be able to taste anything or smell anything.
Well, first and foremost, thankful. Yeah, exactly. You don't want someone to die from it, and you don't want to die from it. But losing your sense of smell and taste, that would scare the hell out of me for sure. Because that's you're like, okay, is this coming back? I had a friend who had COVID, and he's like, yeah, I can't taste or smell anything. And then he's like, it comes back. And I was like, okay, well, that's good.
As long as it comes back.
Still being careful.
As a girl that grew up in her grandfather's Italian bakery, I mean, it's like the senses. I mean, that's the pleasure of life,
Without a doubt.
Yeah, you don't want to lose that. So when it comes to the different batches, you kind of alluded to it a little bit. I am fascinated by the notion that when you guys make a batch, I do it with a podcast, that every time an episode of the Mistress Carrie podcast comes out, I propagate a playlist that goes along with it, hoping to turn people on to music that gets brought up in the podcast or whatever. You guys propagate a playlist because you're actually exposing the whiskey to the sound waves of the music. This is way too sciencey for me. Is this real, and does it work?
That is a great question, because that was my first question when I first got approached by someone representing the brand about being their master distiller. I was like, okay, I got to know, because I'm a whiskey nerd first and foremost. I got to know everything about the process. But I've heard people playing music to whiskey before, and wineries playing music to the wine. And and I've seen studies prior to all this, about uh, microscopic images of water when you're shouting and cursing at it, and it changes, it looks distorted. And then when you're playing really nice soft music, it changes the actual pattern. So to me, I knew that there was probably a semblance of science behind it, but I wanted to know exactly what. And after I took over, I kind of went down the rabbit hole of digging through. Dave had done some tests with the sonic enhancement. So the way we apply this is we play Metallica playlists at a very low frequency. We partnered up with Meyer Sound, which is the sound company that creates the wall of sound for Metallica for all their tour equipment. And they have a lot of their stuff is proprietary. Their equipment is proprietary, made by Meyer. And so we kind of got all the experts in the room. Metallica wanted to create a whiskey that could stand on its own. Dave wanted to create a whiskey that could incorporate elements of the band, and he had this idea he'd gotten the idea actually from when he was a cadet at West Point. And he had talked to the caretaker for the pipe organ there. It's supposedly one of the largest pipe organs in North America. And the guy showed him this note and he told him, he said, I'm afraid to play this note for very long because the whole building vibrates so aggressively that I'm afraid it's going to bring the whole cathedral down on top of us. And that stuck in Dave's head. He's like, wow, sound. How can we incorporate sound into the whiskey making process? And at what point do we do that? And so they came up with the idea. He's doing the cask finish with the black brandy. They had a control barrel that they did not apply the black noise sonic enhancement process to, and a barrel that we did apply the black noise sonic enhancement process to. Took samples from both of those, sent them off to the lab, and when they came back, we were looking for 9 different markers in there. There's 9 different flavor profile markers that you're pulling from the wood, like the vanillins of the wood, the oak lignans in there. There are of 9 different markers. So every single one of those markers from the sonic enhanced barrel were completely elevated over the control barrel that had not had the sonic enhancement to it, which proved that it worked. And what it was doing was basically taking whiskey, taking the spirit, and it's called acoustic cavitation. So it's moving it rapidly in and out of the wood at a very rapid pace, and picking up flavors beyond what we call the red line, which is where the whiskey naturally has already interacted with the wood. Now we're going past that point, picking up all these other crazy flavors and bringing it back into the wood, which gives it a little more depth of color, gives it a lot more oak profile. A lot more of the flavors you're going to pull from the wood show up because of the black noise. So every batch, my job as a master blender is to ensure that the quality and consistency are always the same. So I want to make sure that batch 106, when I create 107, that it tastes as close as possible to 106. What changes is each playlist curated by an individual member of the band is always going to be different. When you ever see a sound wave like you do on the front of the bottle, you're seeing the peaks and the valleys. Those are peaks and valleys. That's movement. That's actual. We've all walked in front of a speaker or been stupidly.
We've all been at a Metallica concert and felt it.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
you're feeling that in your chest. You're feeling that vibration, that movement, that motion is exactly what we're harnessing inside the barrel and getting the whiskey to work just a little bit harder.
I am by no means a chemist or a scientist in any way, shape, or form. But when you're talking about exposing it to these low end frequencies and you're talking about the particles moving around, is it creating heat from all of the particles moving around? Is that what actually changes the way that it tastes?
Hey, I mean, I know cavitation generally could, but acoustic cavitation is different. It's not creating heat, because that would be a problem. We'd be losing, evaporation and that sort of thing. But it is creating movement, but it is not it's not boiling. We're not boiling the whiskey or anything.
I can't believe this is the longest I've gone on Cocktails in the War Room without a drink. normally at 8:30.
I started without you. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. So should I try? Well, I've already tried the batch 89, so I suppose I should.
Yeah, crack it open. There you go.
I
love that sound.
I love the noise. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite sounds on the planet.
And you told me it was acceptable if I put some ice in a good glass.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're tasting it for the first time, I generally would encourage without ice, but and then you're sipping. Yeah, there you go.
There's no ice in the bottle. Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, that was the batch that we played the playlist from the S&M2 live concert
Which
that
is
they just did last year.
Why I love the two bottles I have, because this one came from the concert and this one was distilled in the concert's music. So I love that.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, it did the cast finish Black Noise with it. Cheers.
Cheers. So, yeah, I know, right? The COVID makes everything awkward.
It's always so weird not to be able to hug your friends when you do see them, and I haven't really seen a whole lot of people where you're like, I'm a hugger, like
me too.
And it's drives me nuts.
And I'm so used to 22 years on the air at AAF doing interviews in person,
Right.
and you're talking about the tour that Metallica was supposed to go on. 2020 was supposed to be AAF's 50th anniversary. Every huge rock band was going out on the road this year. And when you're doing interviews in person, backstage at a show, on the bus, whatever, the location always affects, just like the sound waves affect the taste of the whiskey, the location of the interview always affects how the interview goes because you can't control the environment.
Right.
And now it's so weird to do interviews where it's like you're so far away.
Right.
But yeah, I love the fact that we can see each other because it makes me feel a little more human to be able to look at the person I'm talking to.
I agree. I mean, that makes all the difference. There's nothing like, obviously, like being in person and, like you said, the environment. There's a feel that creates the excitement for wherever you are, and we're all finding ways to connect as best we can without being in person.
Why is it that when I drink whiskey, I'm instantly warm? Whereas if I drank vodka or tequila, I don't I can already, just from the sips I've taken, I'm warm. Why is that?
I don't know what the difference would be between vodka. I think we associate vodka with Russia, and Russia is cold. So, it's the same way for me. I think there's always there's a certain viscosity to whiskey as well that's kind of mouth-warming, and there's definitely, it's the ingredients that we're using. It's I really feel that warmth is well, it's generally a little higher too. I mean, it's higher proof. Whiskey's, this is, it's going to be a little higher proof than a lot of whiskeys, a lot of liquors and things out there.
And when it comes to alcohol, I know when I drink tequila that I need to be supervised, because the more tequila I drink, the more a misdemeanor seems like not that big of a deal. And after a few of them, a felony seems like something that could be an attainable goal for me. What is it about alcohol that affects people on a chemical level differently? Because I know some people that are like, I can't drink anything brown. If I drink something brown, I get into trouble. And with me, it's tequila. I love it, but I sprout these horns.
I think a lot of people are smart in paying attention to the differences. Like, I don't do brown liquor, and they obviously had an incident or two that kind of proved that for them. I'm a huge mezcal fan. I love smoky mezcal. I try to get to Oaxaca at least once a year and go down and visit mezcal country. So it's one of my, besides whiskey, it's probably my other favorite. But it is different with whiskey. The color in whiskey is 100% the wood particulate. It's actually, you can actually evaporate a dish of whiskey, and what's left behind are minuscule amounts of wood particulate. So a lot of times that will tend to affect certain people. Like the wood seems to affect people, whereas like agave is just its own entirely different beast, and sometimes, like you said, a beast with horns. So it really depends on the plant. Every plant has its own unique character, and I think has its own effect within when it turns into alcohol.
And I know that there's a lot of alcohols that pair fantastic with food. And everybody that knows me knows that I am a passionate eater. I love to cook. I love food. So when you're talking about blackened whiskey in general, if you're going to make a whole immersive experience and you're going to drink the whiskey and you're going to eat, what things are going to help to bring out the flavors of the whiskey that you could eat?
I'm a foodie as well. I love to cook, and
You're in a good town, right? You're in Denver, right?
Yeah,
Denver's such a good place to go out to eat.
It is now, man. It didn't, early 90s, it was terrible. You couldn't find anything. It was still kind of a cow town back then. Denver really came into itself in the last, I think, 10 to 15 years. But now there's so much good food here, so many great restaurants. Well, there were. A lot of them are unfortunately and sadly going away. I saw a list the other day that someone had laid out all these, great restaurants that we've all been going to for years that are closed permanently.
Yeah.
And it's just heartbreaking. But, kind of coming back around, I always love taking elements of the whiskey, especially if you can cook with whiskey. That's even more fun. And then you drinking the whiskey and cooking with it. But I lean towards, I was raised in southern Colorado, rural Colorado, and I definitely do love my steak and potatoes. I
had a feeling that was what your answer was going to be. Yeah,
it's easy, and where I grew up is corn country, so they're known for their Olathe sweet corn, or they're known for their corn. And to me, that's just like you can balance all those things out. But there's so many other ways. I bought this book last year, and once I found it, I was blown away by it, and it's such a cool book. It was in the 60s, a book written by Vincent Price and his wife, and it's a cookbook. It's a treasury of recipes from their travels all over the world. So they took menus from all these restaurants that they love to go to, and they were able to recreate these recipes in their book. So you actually have an image of the recipe, or the image of the menu, and then here's all the recipes. And then, so I've been going down the path of trying to learn a lot of the recipes from that book. Because
I didn't know Vincent Price was such a foodie.
He was a huge foodie. There's pictures in there of him and his wife in their kitchen. They have all these copper pots and pans and a brick oven, and they love to cook and entertain. And that's actually, I got my friend, my best friend, that book for Christmas last year, and he stuck it on the counter next to The Joy of Cooking and Grey's Anatomy. So he's always got I always love walking into his kitchen, just seeing that. But anyway, it's the food in there, and it was funny because a lot of the recipes in there, liver and onions was just a huge thing in the 60s for whatever reason. Yeah. That just seemed to be a dish that everybody served, and obviously and thankfully that's gone away. But I was always kind of blown away, like how many places served liver and onions.
I'm so glad that you can't see the scroll of comments that are flying. If I'm not looking at you directly, it's because I'm trying to make it through the scroll. So I want to go through some of the stuff that people have been talking about. So first of all, they want to congratulate you on having the most epic facial hair of any guest that anybody has had in the War Room to date.
Thank you.
Everybody thinks you look like a young Kurt Russell. I'm sure you get that all the time because you really do.
I've been getting a lot of Snake Plissken lately.
That's what's in the comments. Yeah. Right. They said one person said you are the most heavy metal looking guy between the records behind you, the black t-shirt, the eye patch, the glass of whiskey. It's like you're a modern day freaking pirate, dude. It's unbelievable.
That's something I'm certainly going to embrace.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers to that. Cheers. Some questions about the bottling. Somebody wanted to know how loud the music is that you're exposing. I think it was Brianna actually here in the War Room that wanted to know. You said it's low frequency, but are the walls of the bottling or the distillery shaking when you guys are doing this sound stuff to it?
No, so we have a special room for the barrels. So this happens while they're in the cask finished barrels. So they're in the black brandy barrels. And the frequency is so low that you hear it. It's just like when you hear, and you've been to concerts, before while they're testing out the sound equipment. And you hear the
subs. It's
you're hearing all those sounds.
Yep.
It's more like that low vibrating hum.
Oh, okay.
So it's a very, very low frequency. And right now we actually have we're applying for a patent on the process. It works so well that we've applied for a patent on it. So we don't talk about the details of what frequency, but it is a very low frequency.
So when you're making this whiskey and you're exposing it to propagated playlists of Metallica, have you done a cross experiment where you like expose it to Taylor Swift to see if it ruins the whiskey, or like
No, I would hate to do that to whiskey. So, we use Metallica whiskey for, obviously commercial reasons because, they own the rights to their music. So,
right.
So we can actually post the playlist. And what's cool about that is that you can go on blackandwhiskey.com and look up the batch that you have. You can look up batch 86 and see which band member curated the playlist. There'll be the songs in the list, and then a Spotify tab that you can take a photo of, and that will actually populate that playlist in your Spotify. So you can listen to the playlist that was used to sonically enhance the whiskey you're actually sipping on, which is kind of a cool interactive experience with that. So we haven't tried it. It would be cool. I would love to see what the band comes up with, what their playlist, if we could use anybody's music, if there was a way that we could actually use anyone's music, what they would come up with. There's going to be, there's going to be so much obscure stuff. There's going to be, Thin Lizzy and Lemmy, this Motorhead. There's going to be stuff in there where you're just going to be like, oh, this is the best playlist ever. And this is a playlist, it's like getting a mixtape from James Hetfield.
Yeah.
So I hope that we can do that someday. That would be really, really cool.
I know that you did the playlist for for batch 100.
Yeah.
But with all of the other batches, do you have someone in the band that you think makes the best tasting playlists?
It's funny. There's a lot of people, I'll see they'll buy different batches and try them against each other. They'll try the Lars playlist against the Robert Trujillo. A lot of people, I think, I've heard a lot of people who lean towards Robert Trujillo's playlist because he picks a lot
low
of
end guy. Yeah.
Yeah. He likes the bass forward. And so I could see a lot of people, they pick based on that. But I think it's really the songs that they pick. It's not like it's all going to be bass solos all the way through on Robert's playlist, but it is going to be their preference. So I don't know. I think, it certainly has a difference. Each one of those playlists, again, looking at those sound waves. And this is kind of a cool little thing. Speaking of the sound bites, yeah, you can see it there, kind of there. So the sound wave,
yeah, I have one too.
Yeah, perfect. That sound wave is actually James Hetfield singing the word blackened. That's a sound.
No way, really?
Yeah, that's a real sound bite.
This is what the audio files that I edit for the podcast look like. So
yeah,
that's very cool that the detail into the bottle and the logo and everything was that specific.
And it was subtle too, because you don't see Metallica anywhere on there. You don't see the guys, signatures or anything. They weren't trying to make.
Yeah, it's not the Metallica font. It's not.
Right.
Yeah.
They wanted a whiskey that was going to stand on its own because it is a phenomenal whiskey. It's created by someone who absolutely knew what they were doing, and I'm evolving it in other directions. We've got other expressions that we're coming out with that I'm excited to work on, and it's really fun just to see that they really wanted this whiskey to stand on its own. That's why it's owned outright by Metallica. It's not, they're not having a large company large whiskey company just make a Metallica line. This is their whiskey. They own it. And that's pretty extraordinary that you know, they really are passionate about everything that they do. They put 1,000% into every album that they create, everything that they do 1,000%. And it was the same with this, you know. So it's cool that there's subtle nods in there. If you're a Metallica fan, you're gonna see the word black and you're gonna know what that is. But if you're just a whiskey aficionado, it's something for them to try. They're gonna find a whiskey that is a blend of, you know, Tennessee whiskey and Kentucky bourbon, an Indiana rye, Canadian rye, and all that is aged average of 8 years in white American oak. So you're getting a phenomenal whiskey already. Excuse me.
I know here in Massachusetts, you know, we can be a little slow when it comes to getting booze delivered and whatever. So when you launch a whiskey and you don't, you know, necessarily have a distillery where you can go and buy it, and it's not, you can get this because everybody is asking, where can I get it? You can just order it on blackandwhiskey.com, right? And get it shipped to you, right?
You can go to on blackandwhiskey.com, you can go to the store locator button, and that will, and then you put in your zip code. It's going to tell you where there's a store near you that carries blackened. And then there are online e-commerce retailers that you can buy it at as well.
Because it seems like a really awesome gift for somebody that loves Metallica, but also loves whiskey, like for the holidays.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's a win-win. It's the perfect gift. And like I was saying, we still have some of the Batch 100 box sets out there, which are the vinyl record. There's a picture disc. I was pretty honored and humbled by they selected a picture with myself and the band on the record, but the Batch 100 bottle is in there, so you can actually get that online as well through I think Cask Cartel and Spirited Gifts. And so there's some other places out there where you can find it. But when you're looking for just a regular bottle, you can look on e-commerce and see if they'll ship to your state. I know that they don't ship to New York, unfortunately, because of New York liquor laws. But
you can find a store where you can go and buy it.
Yeah, the easiest way is just look on blackandwhiskey.com and look at the store locator, and that will put in again your zip code. You'll be able to find a liquor store that carries it near you.
This time of year, you know, obviously we have Thanksgiving on Thursday, and then there's Black Friday, and then there's Small Business Saturday, and then there's Cyber Monday, and today is Giving Tuesday, which is the day that encourages people around this time of year to support amazing nonprofits. And I know that it's a huge initiative for the band to focus on the All Within My Hands Foundation, and the whiskey is partnering with that. So can you talk about that whole charitable initiative?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. It's one of the things I love about working with Metallica is that they really are a family. They approach everything like, you know, the Met fam. Really, they approach it with heart, and their charity, All Within My Hands, has been significant in helping people get back on their feet, helping bring food to communities. It's really pretty extraordinary how on a personal level, you know, they go out and will volunteer at food banks. Last Tuesday, I was supposed to volunteer. Well, I did volunteer with James here in Denver at a local rescue mission, handing out turkeys to families in need. Those things it's all really exciting what they do. And Black and Whiskey really wanted to give back. You know, we for us, it's just as important to support their charity and their charity efforts. So from now until the end of the year, we are donating $5 for every bottle sold to All Within My Hands to help their charity.
When you go and do something like that with James, does he pick you up in one of his amazing cars?
I have ridden around in one of his he's got a badass truck. And he's got some pretty cool cars. I'm a huge car nut and motorcycle nut myself. So that's really, we hit it off that way when I first my last interview was actually with the band. So I met all the band at the same, well, independently, but that was the final interview. And we just sat there and talked about cars and motorcycles. And, you know, we had a pretty fun with that. He's got some really cool vehicles. I was at his, he donated 10 cars to the Peterson exhibit.
I
museum.
saw that. I mean, these cars are,
Mind blowing.
It's like, I don't even think I should call them a car.
They're
Because
works of art.
yeah, exactly. It's like they're not, it's almost an insult to just call them an automobile because they're so much more than that.
They really are. I got to attend the ribbon cutting, basically, where he got to donate and then talk about each car and each project and how much heart and time and effort and collaboration, how many people he collaborated on with these things, and they're just gorgeous. I mean, they're amazing. I was just kind of blown away by the creative. I mean, some of these cars he literally just drew them up on a piece of paper and they designed it from scratch. You know, a couple of these cars, they were just built from scratch.
It's unreal. I mean, you see, they'll take an old car and just completely reshape it, or they'll build something from scratch. And it's like, you look at it and it looks like something that's really old sometimes, but also something that is from so far in the future, you can't even imagine where in his imagination it came from.
It's pretty cool. And one of the coolest things that James did was he donated one of his cars to blackened whiskey. So and you're gonna love this. It's called the War Wagon.
Yeah.
And I was waiting.
Yes.
I was.
God, I want to ride in the War Wagon.
It is so much fun to drive. It is so it's a 1937 and 38. It's kind of a mishmash, but it's a cab over engine. So you're literally, it's got this kind of stubby nose. It kind of looks like a bulldog in a way. It's just, it's kind of.
My grandfather used to have one of those. It was like a 62 like Ford van. And it was the same kind of thing. It almost, if you looked out the windshield, it looked like you were going to fall out of the van because there was nothing in front of you.
Yeah, you're right there.
Yeah.
And first time I got to drive that thing was in Kentucky. And I was like, and I asked James's mechanic, all about it. I was like, okay, what kind of engine's in this thing? Transmission, like tell me all about this thing. And it gets up and goes. I was on the highway just hauling ass with this thing. And it is so much fun to drive. But what was weird is that there's not a whole lot of room in the cab. There's an engine housing, and the steering column's right between your legs. And so the gas pedal, the brake was up here and the gas pedal was here. So you're pushing the gas, and then you gotta put your heel up. You have to really kind of be quick with it. And anytime I was going to events or things, I'd be driving around and I'd see somebody that I'd seen at the event before, and I'd pull over like, hey, get in, let's go for a spin. So the last event I was at was in South Carolina with Kirk Hammett and Robert Trujillo. We were doing bottle signings at a liquor store, and we had the War Wagon there. And later that night, they were playing in their side band, the wedding band. Yeah. And they were having Kirk was having a wah-wah pedal guitar, a wah-wah off with Mrs. Smith. Have you seen her?
Yes. Hilarious.
Yeah. Oh, she's awesome. She's so cool. And they were doing their wah-wah pedal off, and they were playing later that night. But I saw a couple of guys that had stuck around for a few days to go to this event, and Kirk's horror film poster museum collection. We were there for that. And so I was giving rides. I'd see people, I'd give them rides for a few blocks and then spin them around and pick up a few more. And it was a blast. The thing is, it's pretty badass looking.
Before I let you go, when it comes to all of your military buddies, I know that when you get out of the military, if you're active duty, the reintegration back into civilian life or normal life coming out of the military, especially for someone like you that, has been forward deployed, and it can be, that transition can be difficult in a lot of ways, especially multiple deployments. And, as you're very well aware, since 9/11, I mean, there's people that have been deployed more times than they have fingers to count them on. And so when it comes to life after the military and keeping in touch with all of your war buddies, I'm sure that your phone rings when Metallica comes to town or when they want to come visit you. Can you talk about, because there's a lot of veterans and military guys and ladies that are here in the War Room with us every week. Can you talk about the importance of keeping in touch with those guys that you served with, and the importance on the transition back into normal life and doing it together?
It means everything. The connection with those, they're brothers. I mean, it is a family. It's like nothing else you'll have with anyone else. And the things that we went through specifically, with my team, we it's important that we have that connection because we can talk openly about it. Whereas you're not going to talk to anybody about it, about anything. But you can with them, and it's important to keep those relationships. I got out in '95. The internet really wasn't a thing, and so
it's a lot harder to keep in touch.
Yeah, so we all had our addresses in a little address book. Well, we all ended up, one buddy went up to Kodiak Island in Alaska to be a hunting and fishing guide, and I hunt with him every year, we'll be hunting starting this year every year. And the importance of connecting and finding these guys, it took us forever to kind of find. When I left, I built a half-size '67 Chevy school bus into a house on post at the barracks in Fort Drum, New York. I was with the 10th Mountain Division up there. Literally ran an extension cord out from my barracks room window every weekend and transformed this thing into a really, really cool house. And I lived out of that for almost 2 years after I got out of the Army because I knew I needed to reintegrate in my own fashion. And, so I ended up on the Oregon coast working as a carpenter, learning how to surf. And I didn't have a phone. I had a pay phone. I'd call, I'd try and keep in touch with everybody. We all kind of got lost throughout the years. And then once we really started to track each other down, we held on to that fiercely. And it really it makes a huge difference. Veterans Day, where that's who I'm on. That's who I'm talking to first thing in the morning. Are my brothers, and it's important to, and I really want to show my regard and appreciation for our veterans and our soldiers who are currently serving and who have served, the sacrifices that they have given, because it's everyone has a different way of dealing with whatever they went through, and there's a brothers in arms pride of being connected to that network of support and family, and don't be afraid to reach out to that network and embrace it.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for being so generous with your time and hanging out with us in the War Room. I know that, the comments have been going crazy, and you've answered a lot of the questions that, people have been asking, and I've been trying to ask questions that have been popping up. And, you can obviously tell that you love what you do. I don't know how you couldn't love what you do, but you can obviously tell that you love it. And when you talk to somebody that genuinely loves what they do, it's obvious. And,
Yeah.
and it doesn't feel like work when you love what you do.
No, I mean, I'm amazed sometimes that this is my job. I really I'm pretty blown away. And I think about too, all the long nights, distilling, my 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. shift, in the early days of distilling. And, just like anything, I think we work our way to a place where, it does become, an adventure and fun. And we get to, really kind of embrace it and enjoy it. So I'm fortunate, and honestly, it's been so fun talking with you. I could do this every Tuesday.
Listen, you're more than welcome to come into the War Room anytime you want, Rob. We're here every Tuesday just hanging out. I mean, we've got quite the family together here, and we love having musicians in here, and we've had veterans here, and we just love having people in, and obviously the interviews in the War Room turn out to be after action reports. I steal a lot of my terminology from the military.
Yeah, I love it.
And so the after action reports go up on the podcast so that if people weren't able to join us here in the War Room live, you can watch the episodes on YouTube, or you can download the podcast and listen to the interviews. So I know that there's going to be a lot of very passionate whiskey drinkers that are going to be sampling some blackened American whiskey this holiday season, and comparing and contrasting, I think, to the playlist, which I think is amazing.
That is fun. I mean, that's for one, you're listening to Metallica music. I have fine tuned this hot rod back here to be able to really crank up Metallica when I'm listening to it, but to be able to listen to the playlist while you're drinking the whiskey, that playlist actually sonically enhanced is like, there's just something, you just wrapping your mind around it is it's too much fun.
Yeah, it's very cool. Well, please come back anytime when you guys
I
got
will.
new stuff happening or whatever. You are always welcome. We, everybody is just thanking you so much for coming in and hanging out with us tonight. So you're welcome back anytime, and thank you for your service.
No,
And
thank you. That's very
please
kind.
tell all of your brothers in arms as well that we appreciate their service as well. I know Veterans Day has already passed, but we're appreciative here every day. So thank you.
I definitely will. And I just want to tell you, when things open back up and we are touring again and we're on the road, we bring the War Wagon to every city that we're in for whatever event we're in. So next time I'm in Boston, I will definitely take you for a long spin.
I
in
would
the
love
War
that.
Wagon. And we'll hopefully get to actually talk in person then.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe someday you'll be able to have a cocktail with me for real in the War Room, which is, this is where the bar is. And it's my collection of military memorabilia from the generations of my family that have served, and all of the guys I met overseas when I was embedded with them, and all of the things they've left behind. There's a lot of really cool, I mean, you can see some of the posters and stuff in here.
Yeah.
Cool old military memorabilia in here. So you're always welcome.
I would love to see it. That would be very cool.
Well, have a great rest of your night, Rob. Thank you so much.
Carrie, thank you. Thank you for the hospitality.
Absolutely. And happy holidays, obviously. Happy New Year. Here's to hoping 2021 is a fuck of a lot better than 2020.
I couldn't have put it better. Cheers. Thank you.
You got it. Good night.
Have a great holiday.
Thanks. You too. All right. There he is, guys. How cool is Rob Dietrich? Holy crap. He is amazing. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Like, there were so many questions that I had and things that I wanted to ask him. And we have so much to talk about in this episode, just besides whiskey, that we got to get to it. There's so much to talk about. So thank you guys all for your questions and your comments and everything. I hope that I did a good job of asking them. So what we usually do, obviously, is we recap last week's podcast episode before I get to the announcement of who's on this week. So what did you guys think about episode 25 featuring Scruffy Wallace from The Shadows of Boston? I thought it was really interesting when Scruffy was talking about how the bagpipes actually work and the history of tartans. And I thought that it was really, really interesting hearing about his military service, his time overseas. And I think if you, Keith is talking about my F-bomb. You got to get one in every once in a while. I think if you got introduced to Scruffy as a member of the Dropkick Murphys, it would be easy to not know a lot of the other things about his life, about his military service. And so I love the fact that you guys were so passionate about this episode. Danielle says he was really interesting. Scruffy was hilarious, says Mark. Such a great episode, says Penny. Great show. It was so good. I feel like I got a whiskey dick, says David. Thank you very much. Joe said he was very funny talking about the working parts of the bagpipes. It's really hard to talk about the working parts of the bagpipes and not sound like sexual innuendos one after the other. So it was very hard for him to keep a straight face too. And I will tell you that we are working on a special War Room appearance before the holidays. So we are working on all of that. Mark says, I had no idea he was Canadian. So there you go. Scruffy podcast was a trip, says David. I like the respect it shows for the bagpipes and the military together for the fallen. Yeah, it was really interesting to hear his perspective being a member of the Canadian military and how the bagpipes were part of his official role in his MOS when he was serving in the Canadian Army, which I thought was really interesting. So I love that you guys love the episode. And like I told you guys last week, if there's somebody that, loves the bagpipes or loves punk rock music, please share the Scruffy episode. And the Shadows of Boston music is coming out in the new year. And I am working on getting a special holiday performance of the Shadows of Boston here in the War Room. I have been hinting to members of the fan club, the backstage pass holders, about who was going to be on the podcast this week. And I will tell you that since I announced the podcast and launched the first episode back in June, the guest this week is one of the most requested guests that I have gotten. And it took a little while to get this person on the podcast. And no, Joe, it's not the pajama party. I'm still working on Danielle for the pajama party in the War Room before the end of the year. I'm working on that too. But this guest has been somebody that people have been asking for and asking for and asking for. And I got him, baby. LB is this week's guest on the Mistress Carrie podcast. And we had an incredibly candid and personal conversation about his struggles, about his health, about his mental health, about his family, about his upbringing, about hockey, about our time together at WAF. And I can't wait for you guys to hear it. So episode 26 goes live at midnight, and it features the one and only Lyndon Svi Byers, otherwise and affectionately known as LB. And I am so excited for you guys to hear this episode. So like I tell you guys every week, if you guys are friends with people that are, old school AAFers, or if you have friends or family that are just diehard Bruins fans or hockey fans in general, this episode I think is going to be really interesting. He talked about growing up and then playing in the minors and what that experience was like. I think he gets really personal in a lot of ways, and I think it sheds a lot of light into the person that he became and the reason why his life was shaped the way that it was. And I know that you guys have been asking for this episode, and I had to wait. Kevin Barbary talked about it. I believe Kevin was on episode 17. Kevin and I talked about it, that I bumped into him at the mall. And I was like, have you talked to LB? Because I have called him and texted him and he hasn't gotten back to me. And within an hour, I had a text from LB and he was like, hey, darling, I heard you were looking for me. And I was like, yeah, I have been looking for you. Oh my God, are you okay? And whatever. And Michael says, I hope he's okay. He actually sounded, I don't want to give too much away, but he sounded better than I've heard LB in a really long time. And he's very open and honest about his struggles, about his health, about, we talked about him quitting on the air. We talked about some of the good times and some of the bad times. It was a very candid and personal episode. And I can't wait for you guys to hear it. So Wendy says, I'm so excited. Oh my God, can you see LB and Mike Shue and Carrie in the War Room? Oh Lord, I would love that. LB is still recovering. He is still dealing with a lot of physical injuries and a lot of just repercussions from multiple surgeries. So there's a lot going on. But LB is the guest on episode 26 of the Mistress Carrie podcast. And I want to thank the sponsors of this week's podcast episode, Digital Federal Credit Union, or DCU, who you can find at dcu.org, and also Latini Creative Solutions, who you can find at latinicreative.com. So just by your response in the comments right now, I know that you guys are going to love this episode. So I also want to remind you that if you listen to this episode, don't forget to hit subscribe to the Mistress Carrie podcast, because you get episodes every day during the week, because you get situation reports, which are all of your rock news stories, music headlines, entertainment updates, and you get it all within 5 minutes. So if you subscribe to the podcast, you get everything, and it's all right there for you. And we are everywhere. We're like Glitter on Christmas morning. You can't get rid of us. Apple, Google, Spotify, radio.com, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Deezer, Overcast, TuneIn, Pandora, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Amazon, and to all of our friends that are listening in India on JioSavan and also Ghana. Thank you guys for checking out the Mistress Carrie podcast as well. And speaking of foreign countries, we are holding steady at 95 countries that are interacting and listening to the Mistress Carrie podcast, which I am super excited about. I have so much stuff to tell you guys, so I'm going to move fast. Knowing that Rob Dietrich from Black and American Whiskey was going to be on, I only wanted to tell you guys about some live stream concerts that are coming up. Primus announced that they are doing a live stream concert on December 11th from Les Claypool's wine cellar, speaking of alcohol. And that is happening on December 11th at 9 p.m. And you can get tickets at primuslive.com. And if you're trying to get into the holiday spirit, the Trans-Siberian Orchestra is taking their 90-minute live stream concert to the interwebs, and it's happening on Friday, December 18th at 8 p.m. And you can go on to the TSO website and get all of the details on that. Okay. One of the things that is starting to happen is companies and organizations are starting to come to me wanting to offer you guys discounts on stuff. And so I call them Mistress Carrie deals. And I told you guys about Spartan Brews Coffee Company, who has offered 15% off of everything you buy, which is all their apparel and obviously their coffee, if you use the code word Mistress15. And they are also donating $5 from the sale of every one of these. They call them Mistress Carrie purple fleece zip-ups. So you get 15% off, which is amazing. So if you got a coffee aficionado in the family and you're looking for a gift, this is a great way to do it and to do it at a discount. And new this week, another Mistress Carrie deal. The CBD Relief Clinic is offering you guys and everybody here in the War Room 15% off of everything that they sell for using the code word Mistress15 as well. Everything gets shipped straight out of New Hampshire. The CBD Relief Clinic, it's all of their products are made in the U.S. They're USDA certified organic. They are produced in an FDA registered facility, and they are third-party lab tested as well. And so not only do they have products for humans, but they also have products for your pets as well. So if you are looking for some relief for yourself or for your four-legged friend, I love the fact that that companies like the CBD Relief Clinic, who, by the way, have been Mistress Carrie and WAF fans for years, and they hit me up and said, hey, we want to be able to give you guys a discount. So I will tell you that everybody in the War Room can get 15% off of everything you buy. Just use the code at cbdreliefclinic.com of Mistress15 and you get 15% off. But I will also tell you that if you have a Mistress Carrie Backstage Pass, there's actually a way for you to get even more of a discount. And so if you have a Backstage Pass, you get access to that as well. And then because it is Giving Tuesday, I want to talk to you guys. We talked about it last week, but I want to talk to you guys about the Larkin Motors Foundation, who is helping veterans. And one of the ways that the foundation helps veterans is to help veterans in need by fixing their vehicles. And so the way that they fund this program through the foundation is they raffle off vehicles. So right now you can buy, which is a tax deduction on Giving Tuesday, by the way, they are selling 2,500 tickets at $100 a ticket. And because they're a nonprofit, the $100 raffle purchase is a tax deduction. This 2020 GMC Denali. And not only do you get the truck, which is souped up with all of this amazing stuff that my brain does not understand because I'm not a gearhead, but you also get 30 grand in cash. So if you go to larkinmotorsfoundation.org, you can get one of the raffle tickets. You can see more pictures of the truck, which you can see down here as well. That's what the back looks like. And then obviously the bigger picture up here. But it's fully upgraded. And so not only do you win this brand new truck that has been souped up to the gills, but you also get the 30 grand in cash. And to know that you're helping veterans in need, and you know that you're helping a program that not only is helping veterans, but is also run by veterans as well. So you can find out more about their charitable work if you go to larkinmotorsfoundation.org, and you can get your raffle ticket there. You can find out about all of the other programs that they have. Keith wants to know when he gets a Pornhub discount. Listen, I'm working on it. I told you guys that this was going to be a slow build. I told you guys that I was working on a bunch of different stuff, and this is just another way of helping you guys with turning you on to different amazing charitable initiatives or giving you discounts on different things that you can buy. So there you go. So go to larkinmotorsfoundation.org and get all of the details on their program, and also get a tax-deductible $100 raffle, and hopefully you'll be driving around in that badass truck, which, I mean, just look at the damn thing. It's amazing. The mail call this week. What did I get in the mail? Oh, wait, I put the birthdays. I put the birthdays in the mail call. So happy birthday. Cheers. Well, cheers to the birthdays. Bette Midler, John Densmore from The Doors, and Brad Delson from Linkin Park are celebrating their birthdays today. I put the birthdays on the wrong slide, so I apologize. The mail call, what came in the mail this week was the whiskey, and also my Blackened American Whiskey t-shirt as well. So that's what came in the mail this week. So I want to thank everybody at Blackened for the awesome care package that they sent, and I appreciate the gift of the alcohol as well. There's the address. If you want to send anything my way, obviously I told you guys about the birthdays. This is last week. See, the wheels are falling off the wagon. You guys let me drink whiskey during the show, and this is what happens. So happy birthday. Who else is having a birthday? Anybody in the war room right now? Eric says, I sent my ex-wife's lawyer his annual bag of dicks for Christmas. Fantastic. Let's see. Keith says, Carrie, you have already helped us more than you know. A lot of us might not have made it through this pandemic without you and Cocktails in the War Room. Right back at you. You guys have gotten me through this as well. Not only the radio station getting sold and the process of trying to start my new normal with my company, but then being locked in the house because of COVID, and then getting married and then having my husband deploy right after. You guys have been there with me through the whole thing, and I love you guys. So thank you. So I brought up the Backstage Pass. So if you don't know what that is, a Mistress Carrie Backstage Pass, you can get them on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/Mistress Carrie. And it is a backstage look into everything that I got going on. You get exclusive blog posts and pictures. The people with the Backstage Passes find out about everything first. They get, in a lot of cases, discounts that nobody else is going to get. So not only are they getting a bigger discount from the CBD Relief Clinic, but also very soon, I told you guys last week that the website was going to launch, and we are literally, it's built. It works. We were having a JavaScript error. I didn't even know what the hell that thing was, but we were having an error, and we are literally beta testing the store right now. The website is going to launch in days. Before we meet in the War Room next week, the website will be up and running, and the store will be up and running, and people that have Backstage Passes are going to get discounted shopping for the holidays in the store as well. So if you have not yet gotten your Backstage Pass, you can get it at Patreon. And when I get to Backstage Pass number 100, there is a very special Mistress Carrie prize pack for you. So go to Patreon and get it. And obviously, you guys know where to find me. I'm everywhere. On Twitter at Mistress Carrie, Instagram and Facebook. Obviously, you found me on Facebook at Mistress Carrie WAAF. And then on TikTok, Cameo, YouTube, and Patreon, all of those at Mistress Carrie. And MistressCarrie.com is coming really soon. I was on the phone and swapping emails with the webmaster today, and the site, if there's people that work in web building that are here in the War Room, you're going to be like, really? This is like, the website is not this crazy thing. But when you're building it from scratch and trying to get the store to work and working with the credit card companies and trying to get the inventory and all of the shipping done, it has been, because it's so far outside of my wheelhouse, the learning curve has been incredibly steep. I talked about it really in depth last week about me wanting to learn all of the different aspects that go into designing the products and getting them manufactured and getting them in the store and the shipping and the fulfillment and all of that. And I'm super excited that I know by this time next week, the website's going to be up and you guys are going to um, be able to shop and get stuff in time for the holidays because the products are all getting like T-shirt. Brian, I guarantee you right now is printing T-shirts for you that are going in the store. New T-shirts. We're bringing the War Room T-shirts back. A little different, but we're bringing them back. And then obviously there's other stuff and the hoodies as well. There's a lot of great stuff coming. And I really wanted to be able to learn how this was all going to work. And we're figuring it out, baby. So keep your eyes on all of my social media pages. Of course, the people that are in the War Room, it's going to, before we meet again, it's going to be up. Maybe I'll call an emergency war room. But the people with the backstage passes are going to find out exactly when the website launches because they're going to get the first crack at everything. So there you go. Told you this was a long one. Thank you guys for sticking with me tonight. Huge thanks to our guest, Rob Dietrich, who was absolutely amazing. I thought he was really interesting. I thought he was really informative, super personable. I totally want him to come back in the War Room. And I'm glad that you guys loved it too. So there you go. Ta-da! And don't forget, tonight at midnight, the one and only Lyndon L.B. Byers is the guest on episode 26 of the Mistress Carrie podcast. All right, guys, I think we're done. Are we good? I think we're done. I'm sorry that you didn't get to hang out with Wednesday. I don't even know where she is right now. She was hanging out early, and then as soon as we went live, she took off. So I'll bring her back next week. All right. Good night, guys. I love you. I'll see you next week. And keep your eyes on the social media stuff because the website is coming.